What's up, everybody? Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. And this past Friday, we released our favorite albums of 1999 video, which means it is now time to recap the decade. Full week of 90s related videos coming up. And that will be culminating on Friday with the release of our Albums of the Year 2000 video. All right, so for this first video, we are going to be ranking all of our winners from each year of the decade and talking a little bit about what our favorite and least favorite years of the decade were.
Well, let's start by throwing this in the decade ranking, boys. Better than the 80s, better than the 70s, better than the 60s? What are we thinking? 60s is tough because like the early 60s doesn't compete.
Yeah. I would say it's, I guess it's ahead of the, well, see, I don't even know. I'd probably put it the worst so far. Not that worst means anything because there's a ton of good music, obviously. I think it's a hair behind the 80s for me. Maybe even. It's pretty close.
I got it a hair above the 80s, I think, just for the depth of it. I think the elite 80s, 90s pretty tight for me, but I can find those 25 to 50 albums in the 90s a little easier than the 80s. But yeah. 80s singles were better.
It's a hair ahead of the 80s for me. But yeah, not much. And I agree. The 80s have probably better singles.
Not beating the 70s, though, for sure.
No, not even close. All right. Who wants to start with their list?
I'll start it off. All right. So my winners, a recap. 1990 was Ride Nowhere. 91, Octung Baby by U2. 92, Harvest Moon by Neil Young. 93, August and Everything After, Counting Crows. 94, Grace, Jeff Buckley. 95, I got the Bends, Radiohead. 96, Songs for a Blue Guitar, Red House Painters. 97, OK Computer, Radiohead. 98, Moon Safari, Air. And 99, Summer Teeth, Wilco. Really easy choice for my least favorite winner. Number 10, bringing up the rear, is 1990's Nowhere by Ride. I think it's great, but we'll get to this being the weakest year pretty soon. It's a 4 out of 5 star album for me. Probably the weakest year ever, never to get a 4.5 or a 5 from me. My number 9 is going to be Songs from a Blue Guitar by Red House Painters. Number 8, I've got Summer Teeth by Wilco, which I kind of dabbled putting a little higher and maybe giving a 5-star score, but just can't get there. Number 7, I've got August and Everything After, Counting Crows, which from number 8 to number 7, from Summer Teeth to August, is a pretty big jump. It's a good half-star jump. We're in 5-star territory here for me. Just edging that out is Moon Safari by Air. Pretty tight with August for me, but just kind of on the creativity alone and just how unique it is, it's edging it out. Then I've got the next 5 are going to be among my favorite albums of all time, probably all top 50. Harvest Moon by Neil Young is coming in at number 5. Then I've got Octung Baby by U2 at number 4. And then 3 albums that are probably all top 15, 20 at the most. These are some of my favorites all time. Stuff them in a duffel bag if I'm going to be on a desert island. Number 3, Jeff Buckley with Grace. And then Radiohead finishing it off as the best of the decade. The Bends at number 2. And OK Computer at number 1. My favorite album of the 90s. Yeah, I mean, my top 5, like I said, are really among some of my favorite albums of all time. Just clear cut. Gotta have them. Likely, well, I mean, other than Neil Young and Radiohead, pretty much my favorite album of all those artists. Just a few of those, but yeah, slam dunk winners. I don't know if my top 5 from the 90s can quite get to my top 5 of the 70s, but no shit, OK Computer is my favorite album of all time. So I made that pretty clear throughout the history of this channel and will continue to do so. So going back to like the 90s versus 80s argument, my top 5 from the 90s is stronger than my top 5 from the 80s. So looking good for that.
For me, my winners in order from the year they were released. 90, I had Belly Button as my winner by Jellyfish. 91 was 10 by Pearl Jam. 92, Angel Dust by Faith No More. 93, Spilt Milk, again by Jellyfish, the only 2-time winner. Surprising. 94, Park Life by Blur. 95, I got the Bends by Radiohead. 96 was 1977 by Ash. 97 was Ben Folds 5 with Whatever and Ever, Amen. 98, Dave Matthews Band, Before These Crowded Streets. 99, Euphoria Morning by Chris Cornell. And if we're ranking those in order from number 10, For These Crowded Streets by Dave Matthews, an easy number 10. Number 9, Belly Button by Jellyfish. Number 8 is going to be Euphoria Morning by Chris Cornell. Number 7 is going to be 1977 by Ash. 6, Spilt Milk from Jellyfish. Number 5, Park Life by Blur. 4, 10 by Pearl Jam. 3, Angel Dust by Faith No More. 2, Whatever and Ever Amen. And 1 can be The Bends. And I would say the top 4 are going to be in my top 50 all time. The Bends and Whatever and Ever Amen, I think, are in my top 10. Not sure about that. Last time I checked, it was around there. Nothing quite from the 70s, but I think probably ahead of anything from the 80s.
Except Purple Rain, probably, right?
Except Purple Rain. I forgot about that one. All right, never mind. Purple Rain is pretty much number 1 or 2, so it's tough, but I think as a whole, decent amount of 90s albums in my top 100, but probably the 80s has a little more in like my top 250, so it's a little more even in the 80s. I had a couple of years in the 90s where I just really struggled to find anything that I really liked, really was into. So mixed bag. Some years were 94 and 91, I had 10 or 11 that are probably, easy in the top 250, just really stacked years. And then others, 1998, for instance, nothing probably in my top 1,000. So hit or miss from the 90s. Kind of odd the way it works out like that.
My top 10, starting in 1990, I had Bossa Nova by Pixies. 91 was Green Mind by Dinosaur Jr. 92 was Wish by The Cure. 93 was Where You Been by Dinosaur Jr. 94 was Grace by Jeff Buckley. 95 was Trace by Sunvolt. 96 was Recovering the Satellites by Counting Crows. 97 was Handed Over by Dinosaur Jr. 98, Mutations by Beck. And 99, When the Pawn by Fiona Apple. My bottom of all of those was pretty easy to pick. Bossa Nova by Pixies. I do love it. I think it's great, but it doesn't stack up to any of these other ones, really, and it's not even my favorite Pixies record. Number 9, Wish by The Cure. 92 was a very surprisingly weak year for me. I expected it to be really strong, but wasn't that great. Number 8, I've got Mutations by Beck. Number 7 is When the Pawn by Fiona Apple. Number 6, Trace by Sunvolt. Number 5, Green Mind by Dinosaur Jr. Number 4, Handed Over by Dinosaur Jr. Number 3, Grace by Jeff Buckley. Number 2, Recovering the Satellites by Counting Crows. And number 1, Where You Been by Dinosaur Jr. Favorite album of the 90s. And there you have it.
I mean, going into the 90s, if you would have told me that Joe didn't have any Soundgarden or STP winning, that would be surprising to me. Probably surprising to everyone is no Nevermind didn't make any lists, all that. No Smashing Pumpkins.
A lot of runners up for grunge. I had all those, I had every single Alice in Chains record and an EP, but none could quite make it to the top in any of the years. They just had a bad release cycle.
Britpop made a good appearance for Joe in the mid to late 90s. And then Jason got into the alt country stuff a little bit with Sunvolt. And, I got it right every year, but you guys came close.
So how about those artists that just couldn't quite crack? Who were your closest that never made it?
It's tough because I love Nirvana, but my favorite Nirvana album is a live album. So, those didn't really count. So they're pretty misrepresented. PJ Harvey, I think, only got 1 nomination. Love PJ Harvey.
You had her on at least 2 lists.
Did I? I thought I just had the 1 in 92, but maybe you're right.
You had Dry and Rid of Me.
Oh, and your big favorite, Dinosaur Jr., I adore, but I don't think they got in much for me. And then some bands that really started in the 90s putting out good stuff, but I think their best stuff comes maybe in the 2000s, like Flaming Lips and Yo La Tango. Built to Spill got in 99, and then I like some of their stuff after that. So starting to kind of get there for me there. But I like my lists a lot. Yeah, I'll say better than the 80s now that I'm really looking at it. Not by much, but like some of the albums made my top 5 in the 80s for some years I think are great, but not nearly as great as some of these.
Pretty much everyone I like made a list. A couple of ones that maybe a little surprising, couple metal acts, Metallica, Megadeth. They never could quite get on. Other than those guys, Beastie Boys, I mean, there's a little bit of rap that I do like, but most of my rap taste comes later. So other than like Beasties, maybe, I don't think there's anybody else. This is tough. Everybody made it. Like it's odd. Eventually, everyone cracked it. You know, STP kind of got held out in their glory days, but then got in with Tiny Music. Rage Against the Machine had one. So between all these years, pretty much everyone I like, you know, was represented. Maybe Snoop Dogg. I like Snoop Dogg. He could have made it one year, but I'm not like upset that he didn't make it.
Yeah, kind of heartbreaking for me that Mobb Deep didn't get in. My favorite hip hop album of all time by them, and then also like just some great 90s acts. Like if you said great 90s bands want to make a good 90s playlist, I don't even remember mentioning some acts like Cranberries, Mazzy Star. I love all that stuff, but you know, not getting up there. There's just too much good goddamn music all the time.
I guess it's a shame that Prince didn't make my list. He was close a couple times, but yeah, I mean, not really his glory days, so not upset. He won enough in the 80s.
The one for me that was close a couple of times that never quite made it was Bjork. I think every time she released an album, pretty much she was at between 5 and 10 somewhere. So, but I think that window is pretty much closed going forward. I don't think she'll really compete at that level in the 2000s.
Now, did anyone mention the Red Hot Chili Peppers during the 90s? I don't think we ever even mentioned their names. That's one of the larger acts. You know, other than them, we did a pretty good job of covering even the big acts of the 90s. I'm not sure too many people got left out.
Well, if I may be so bold, I do believe Jason does not like the Chili Peppers at all. And my favorite Chili Peppers album does not come in the 90s. It comes in the 80s. So, and I don't love them that much to begin with. But yeah, I don't see any big major. I like Massive Attack a little bit. I know that shows up a lot in the comments. Just there's only 5 you can pick. And then we just talk about a few out of them. But, you know, eventually we'll get to releasing all of our lists years from now when we finalize them. And like I was just listening to the live stream on WYEP from Pittsburgh. I still think that's a great station. And I was listening to some stuff from the 90s during their Slacker radio hour from 10 to midnight. And I found some stuff that I haven't heard of or heard in a long time. And, you know, from the early 90s. And I was like, this is awesome. It's great. It's tough, but a good thing. It's good that it's tough.
All right. So favorite years, least favorite years?
My favorite year was tough. There's 2 years that really stand out for me, 94, 91. I think 94 is a little bit better, just so deep. I mean, I couldn't even mention Weezer in my 94 video. I love the Blue album, but that didn't even, I think it was like 9th in 94. So that kind of sealed it for 94 as my favorite. My least favorite, got to be 98 by a landslide. You know, plenty of stuff I like, but just nothing that is connected with me. And it makes sense because I was 13 at the time and I hated music that was on the radio and on MTV. So that makes sense. I was correct. 98 sucked. It wasn't me. It was music.
I don't have 98 ranked that low. Mine is literally 1 year to the other, the biggest jump ever. Worst year, 1990. Like I said, with my winner, Ride Nowhere, that's a 4 out of 5 star album, which is a great album. But for those really great masterpieces, 90 didn't really have it. The singles were crappy, and the volume of good. I'm with 90 being the worst year that we've done. Still good stuff. Everyone relax in the comment section. There's still good music in 1990, but it is the least favorite year that I've come across. And then literally the next year is one of the best years ever and easily my favorite of the 90s. 91, probably my, there's 11 albums that weren't in my top 5 for 91 that would have won 1990. And it's, you got Massive Attack putting out good stuff that didn't make mine, Nevermind by Nirvana. You've got just all kinds of good stuff. Matthew Sweet, there's a ton, and just an enormous jump. Like, it's just like a black hole. It's just so bizarre, like a Bermuda Triangle of just put it out a few months earlier or like a few months later for the good stuff in 89. You just missed in 90 is really peculiar. And, it's trivial. It's just, how the almanac falls, but big difference from 90 to 91 for me.
My two favorite years, I think, are 93 and 95. 93, super strong at the top and still pretty deep. 95, not as quite as strong at the top, a little bit weaker, but really, really deep, just like 50 good albums in that year that I really like. For the weakest years, I would go 90 and 92. I'd probably say 90 is the weakest with Cram. 92 also kind of weak. Kind of weird that right between those two weaker years is 91, which is excellent.
For the record, I had 90 as my third least favorite year after 98 and 96. And actually, I keep discovering albums from 90s that I like now. So that one might have to get a redo here someday.
All right. So everybody, if you've been playing along with us week to week, put your winners down in the comments. If you haven't been playing along, it's not too late. You can go back, watch all the other videos, or just start here and put what your winners would be down in the comments. We love to see everybody's picks and how you rank them. That's what we're all about here. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check the description for links to all of our social media accounts. And keep an eye on the channel for the rest of the week. We'll be hitting our favorite live albums of the decade, fantasy bands, and our favorite music videos of the 90s. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.